Now I am so close to 1,000 subscribers, I thought it would only be right I start posting proper videos, so here is an in-depth analysis of my ultimate Star Wars ranking, in which from worst to best, I rank all the movies and series. Now I want to say I've recently watched The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Solo and Rogue One again, which I think are the movies that move around in my order the most, so I feel like my current ranking is pretty accurate to how I feel. So without further ado, 15th place, Star Wars Resistance. Now, as much as I feel it is a little bit underrated, like it's watchable, I'm currently on Season 2, Episode 10, and there's been some decent episodes involving Captain Phasma, Poe, etc. It's simply just not aimed for a 16-year-old Star Wars fan. It is clearly focused for kids, which is okay, but yeah, 15th place definitely. It's underrated, but it's just not that good. I wish it built on the main characters of the sequels a little bit more. Hopefully we can get a different sequel series. Now here we go, in 14th place, The Rise of Skywalker, the first movie on the list. The ultimate ending to the Skywalker saga, or at least it should have been. Don't get me wrong, there's parts that I really enjoy, and I've said it before, it's one of the most rewatchable Star Wars movies out there. It is so easy to sit down and watch this film over and over again. But along with the next film on this list, it just could have been so much better. I don't know if any of you have seen the script called Duel of the Fates. They had a different writer that wrote an incredible script for this film, and it would have been great. I would have loved to see it, but ultimately this is what we got, and yeah, 14th place. I wasn't a fan of how the Death Star had still got pieces, even though it got blown to smithereens. I wasn't a fan of the dagger, etc, etc, but yeah, this is where I'm putting it. And next we have 13th, Solo, A Star Wars Story. Now, like all of the Star Wars movies, I do actually enjoy them, and I've said it before, Solo, as it is a standalone movie about a separate character, obviously a huge character in the Skywalker saga, but the events don't really relate too much to Anakin, Luke, Rey, etc. It just feels the least like a Star Wars movie, but I do enjoy it, like I said, and I'm hoping the Lando series coming out soon builds on the story that this film set up. The only reason that I don't think they're making a Solo 2 is because of how badly it did, but the main reason it did badly is because of the response to The Last Jedi that came out so close to it. Here we go, the first prequel movie. Please hear me out. Undoubtedly the worst dialogue in the whole saga, but I'll say it before and I'll say it again. The moments and the storyline of this movie gave it so much potential. Zam Whistle at the start, the bounty hunter chase with Obi-Wan and Anakin, Obi-Wan on Kamino fighting Jango, Anakin falling in love with Padme, his mum dying, Battle of Geonosis, including the arena. It had so much potential, and everyone that loves this movie loves it for its moments, but for me, what's in between those moments is why it's only in 12th. The execution of the great storyline of this film is just a little bit underwhelming. But however, like every Star Wars movie, it is truly great, and it was my favourite as a kid. Place, The Phantom Menace. Having recently rewatched this and Attack of the Clones, I have a pretty good judgment of it. I finally understand the hate the prequels got, having never understood it in my younger years, because I never really paid attention to the dialogue. But in truth, it's pretty bad. It's more the delivery of the words said than the words that are said. However, I do still love this movie. It has one of the best fights ever, the pod race, Battle of Naboo, etc. There's just a little bit too much Jar Jar Binks and a little bit too much politics for my liking, but I still like it. 10th place, Rogue One. Is it the most underrated movie in the franchise, or is the first 2/3 of the movie actually boring? Well, neither. I think it's a very fairly rated movie that gets better the more you watch it, but it is not boring at any point in my opinion. Like I said, I recently rewatched this as well, so I feel like I have a pretty good judgment, and it really is a good movie. Krennic, Cassian Andor, K2 and Jyn are fantastic characters, which sadly had to die because they didn't feature in the original trilogy, and this is obviously based literally moments before A New Hope. And we can't forget Vader as well. He was incredible for the small amount he was in this movie, and any movie with Vader just gets extra brownie points because he's just an incredible character. Best villain of all time, any movie franchise. It also gives backstory to the Death Star, which I think is really good, and overall it's just a fantastic movie for context of A New Hope. and I'm now excited for the Cassian Andor series. Ninth place, The Force Awakens, the start of the sequel trilogy, and a pretty decent movie to be fair. Now my problem with The Force Awakens isn't that it's bad, not a single moment of the movie is bad in my opinion, it's just how much better it could have been. Ultimately, this is the movie that decided the fate of the sequels, and you don't have to be an expert to understand how well they were perceived. This was a great film, it really was. But the reason I've got it low is because of how much better it could have been. They had full control over Luke Skywalker, and they decided to use him for 1 minute. Kylo started out great, to be fair, but then he was outclassed by Rey in a saber duel, which kind of ruins the hype for the main villain of the trilogy within the first movie. Like, have Kylo destroy her at least once and then have the planet rip apart so they get separated. I know Kylo lost because Rey got some of his powers through their dyad and because he just got shot by Chewie's bowcaster, but you're kind of bringing down the fear of the main villain within his first fight. Now, A New Hope, 8th place. Here is the big guns. I think there's a relatively big jump between 9th and 8th place here. I really wish I could put A New Hope higher, because I love this movie. It started everything so iconic, but ultimately just everything above it is so good as well. It just seems a bit disrespectful to have it this low, but in fairness, it does contain probably the worst lightsaber fight in Star Wars with Obi-Wan and Vader, but in fairness, it was the first ever lightsaber fight in Star Wars, so it was never going to be perfect. I've always been a fan of the idea that they remake that fight and nothing else in the movie. Ultimately, I love everything but that. 7th place, The Last Jedi. Stop, wait, hold your comments, hear me out. I'm aware that this is probably the most hated movie, the most controversial movie, because it mainly involves Luke Skywalker, and most people aren't happy with what happened to him. But ultimately, if The Force Awakens didn't set up him being in exile, this wouldn't have happened anyway. But I actually quite like his arc, as well as most things in the rest of this movie. Most and not all, because Rose is in this movie, and I'm sorry, but she's not a very good character. Every part of her in this movie, like every part that included her, was a bad part of this movie. But I used to really hate this movie, and I rewatched it with an open mind, and I suggest you do the same, because now I really enjoy it, and that's why it's this high. It's above A New Hope. And I understand that it killed off probably a lot of people's favourite character in Luke, but he saved everyone, showing one of the most impressive Force feats we've ever seen. And I'd like to touch on Snoke for a second. Although Snoke, supposedly the main villain of the whole sequel trilogy, and Luke, what we thought was going to be the main hero, were both killed off in this movie, Snoke was incredible. If you didn't enjoy him in this movie, then I'm sorry, but I just thought he was very, very good, and the way Kylo killed him was great as well. I loved that. 6th place, the finale to the best trilogy in movie history, the Star Wars original trilogy. Absolutely incredible, and one of the only reasons it is not number 1 is because of the Ewoks, to be honest. I don't know if you've heard, but the Ewoks were meant to be Wookiees, but they thought that would be a bit too graphic. Now if the Ewoks were Wookiees instead, this would be a contender for number 1, it truly would, because the rest of this movie is incredible. Luke, Vader, Palpatine, Leia, it was so iconic. The addition of the prequels makes Vader's turn so much more meaningful and impactful as well. It is honestly so good, and if it's not in anyone here watching, if it's not in your top 6, then I really need to know why. From the start, it links straight back to The Empire Strikes Back with Han in Carbonite at Jabba's palace, and it's just great. 5th place, The Mandalorian. This is the way. I want to say, if we were ranking the 2 seasons separately, I think Season 2 would be just going down 1 under Return of the Jedi, and Season 1 would be down near The Phantom Menace. Ultimately, it was a great introduction series, or season to the series, but it was just a bit bland. However, Season 2 was nothing like that. The introduction of Cobb Vanth, Ahsoka Tano, Boba Fett returning, Luke Skywalker in the finale, Bo-Katan and the Night Owls. It was just so good, and I'm so excited for Season 3. Now that Grogu's not in it anymore, what's going to happen? I think it's going to be more focused around Mandalore, and after Season 3 and Season 4, I assume they're making, this could be going up into the top 3, and wow, I dread to think how my ranking's going to look when the Kenobi show, the Lando show, the Cassian Andor show, and all these other things are coming out. I dread to think how hard this is going to be once they're out. Revenge of the Sith, many people's #1 film, and to be honest, it has the best lightsaber duels in Star Wars. I mean, it has the most, and they're incredible. Anakin and Obi-Wan versus Dooku is great. I think once Obi-Wan's knocked out, it's better, because Anakin and Dooku 1v1 is just great. There's Mace Windu versus Palpatine, which I think is a little bit overrated, but it's still great. Yoda versus Palpatine, Obi-Wan versus Grievous, Obi-Wan versus Anakin. What more can you want? There's so much action, and that's why it's so enjoyable to watch. It is the most rewatchable Star Wars movie. I've said that before, and I'll say that again. And the amount of memes that come from this movie just solidifies it in anyone's top 5 ever, surely. I think the prequels are rated so highly due to Revenge of the Sith and the Clone Wars mostly, but it is still a fantastic trilogy, and this is undoubtedly the best movie of it. I think it just develops so many great characters and truly amplifies the era of pre-original trilogy with all of the Jedi, and then it ends it so well with Order 66, which wipes out hundreds and hundreds of great Star Wars characters. Third place, probably a little bit unpopular, Star Wars Rebels. Now this truly is the most underrated thing in Star Wars. Why does an animation style irritate so many people when we see characters as good as Kanan Jarrus, Thrawn, let alone the characters we already know and love like Vader, Ahsoka, Maul, Palpatine that feature in this series, etc, etc. Honestly, if this was a little longer, like more seasons, it would overtake the Clone Wars, but for the pure volume of Star Wars we get with the Clone Wars, it stays above Rebels. Now if you haven't seen Rebels, you're going to need to, because there is so much content already out and coming out between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, such as Kenobi, Solo, Lando, Rogue One, etc, etc. Most of the characters cross over, and if you liked the Clone Wars, then you will like this, because Ahsoka and Maul are big characters in this. Second place, The Empire Strikes Back, the best movie in Star Wars, and now we know what's above that because this is here. It truly is the most iconic, some of the most iconic lines in movie history. I am your father, for one. A great fight between Luke and Vader. Obviously Luke loses and he's not actually very good, which we would expect. And a fight being good isn't always decided by the choreography, and it being even is what's said and the meaning behind this fight. One of my favourite things about this movie, and one of my favourite things about Revenge of the Sith and Avengers Infinity War, is that the good guys lose. Well, I understand a lot of people don't like watching their favourite characters lose, but this set up Return of the Jedi so well. It built on the characters incredibly, and introduced new fantastic characters like Lando, Boba Fett, etc, etc. There is only one single flaw with this, and it's that it was old and the technology used to make this movie was bad. And my winner, first place, The Clone Wars, 7 seasons of the best era of Star Wars in terms of the characters and stuff. The prequel era, it developed hundreds, and I mean hundreds of characters around that time. We're talking arcs about Ventress, Dooku, Obi-Wan, Anakin, Rex, the Bad Batch, Maul, Savage, Mother Talzin, Yoda, Mace Windu. There was an arc for a bunch of droids with a little midget that sits in one of them, and Jar Jar Binks had his own arc. That's how much Star Wars content we got with this series, and that's why it's first. There's just so much of it. If you told me I could only have one piece of Star Wars content to watch ever, it would obviously be this, because there's so much. 7 seasons of 20 to 22 episodes, all being 20 minutes plus each. Everything you can possibly love about Star Wars features in a massive amount in this series. Now with that being said, that is my ultimate Star Wars ranking done. Let me know what yours is below, or just say if you agree or not. And whilst you're down there, please like and subscribe, because this is my first ever proper Star Wars video, and I'd like to continue doing a couple more rather than just posting my TikToks. Goodbye.